Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to share my routine for memorizing Quran. Now, as you probably noticed, I can read Arabic and I know the rules of tajweed. So I am, able to memorize it a little bit easier and with more accuracy than somebody who doesn't read Arabic yet. But this journey, inshallah, I will show you how, even if you aren't able to read Arabic yet, how you can still implement this method that I've just pulled from different sources and different advices, what works for me in terms of memorizing the Quran. So whether you're reading Arabic or you're not reading Arabic, the most important thing for you to do, whether you're a seasoned, memorizing Quran is easy for you and you've been studying for a long time, if you are not meeting daily with a teacher and the teacher, a live teacher, is not going to be teaching you these ayahs, then you really need to find a qari or reciter of Quran that you like to hear. Also, one of the ones that's recommended for their tajweed. My favorite has always been Sheikh al-Husari, rahimahullah, because of how slow he recites. And my voice is also low, so I can, sound a little bit like him. Because when you're reading a new ayah, even if you know the rules of tajweed and you read it on your own without listening to a qari, you might make some big mistakes and you might memorize the mistakes. And this is really where we want to avoid when we're approaching the Quran. We don't want to memorize mistakes. So the first step is always to listen repeatedly to the whole surah or the ayah, depending on how much you're doing. So if it's a longer surah, you might want to break it up into, 2, 3 ayahs, or if you are just beginning to memorize the Quran, just one ayah at a time. I have the app called Quran Explorer, and that's the one I like because you can set how the range of the ayahs of repetition, and you can have any number of repetitions of an ayah, and it will just loop and repeat the ayah. So to listen and to follow along, inshallah, with your transliteration, as I'll show you how to prepare, or the mushaf, the Arabic text of the Quran itself, but to listen and hear the sounds and really focus on the sounds of the recitation of the qari. This is the first step.
فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا.
The second step to memorizing the Quran effectively is repetition. And this is something that you're going to find across the board. Unfortunately, our brains don't work like a USB plug where we can just stick the Quran in there one time and it'll just download. We have to repeat and repeat and repeat these ayahs. There are so many mercies in that. We are doing it as an act of worship of Allah, so we are repeating and extending the amount of time that we're reciting the words of Allah, but also there's a muscle memory that happens in our mouths when certain ayahs come up, and that repetition actually helps our physical body to keep doing that same motion when the ayah comes up. to the point where you might get to the point where you memorize something so well that you might not even be thinking about it, and it is just coming out. And so, alhamdulillah, may Allah allow all of us to get to that level of proficiency where we hear an ayah and we can read the next ayah just automatically, inshallah. So this next step is all about repetition.
فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا.
Step 3 is when you have been able to read it properly and not really at the point where you're looking away and reciting it without looking at the text. But of course, the ayah has to be read in context with other ayahs to make sure that you don't get this ayah mixed up with another one. So what we do here is we read the ayah, then we read the ayah that came before with that same ayah. Then we go back 2 ayahs and we read that ayah and the ayah that came before, then the ayah we're studying presently. So we go like that, like in a ladder, step stairs, all the way back to the beginning of the surah. Now, if you are studying the very small surahs at the back of the Quran, you can actually do this through memorizing the surah by itself. So if it's the first ayah, then you just learn the first ayah by itself. But as you go along, you repeat that ayah and read it along with the ayah that comes before. And again, this is also something that requires repetition and consistency.
فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا وما لهم به من علم إن يتبعون إلا الظن وإن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا إن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة ليسمون الملائكة تسمية الأنثى وما لهم به من علم إن يتبعون إلا الظن وإن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا وكم من ملك في السماوات لا تغني شفاعتهم شيئا إلا من بعد أن يأذن الله لمن يشاء ويرضى إن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة ليسمون الملائكة تسمية الأنثى وما لهم به من علم إن يتبعون إلا الظن وإن الظن لا يغني من الحق شيئا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا.
The 4th step is something that I just kind of, came up by myself. And what I do is I take my translation and because I understand the Arabic, I can, easier kind of catch the ayah by looking at the English. So I'm reminded what the meaning is. And of course, this takes a level of a more advanced Arabic that you can use the English to trigger your memory for the Arabic. But this is also extremely important, and I'm always a big advocate of making sure that you know what you are saying when you read the Quran. So this is for if you read Arabic or if you don't read Arabic. being able to understand and recall the meaning of the ayah is very important. So what I do here is I'm actually with my eyes reading the English while reciting the Arabic. And as I get more proficient, and this is where the memory is triggered, because I'm not looking at the Arabic and I'm looking at my transliteration. I'm looking at the English translation, the meaning of it, the tafsir of it, so that I can understand what I'm saying and to help trigger my memory, inshallah. This is also combined with reading in the translation tafsir of the ayah before the present ayah, as we did in the previous step. So we're going to be compounding that to make sure that no ayahs are taken out of context. We're going to be reading the ayah before in English, then the ayah before that in English, and bringing it back to the ayah that we're presently studying.
فأعرض عمن تولى فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا إلا الحياة ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا فلم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا.
For those of you who have a desire to learn the Quran and are not Arabic readers, there is no reason why you cannot study the Quran. When I first became Muslim, I had never been exposed to Arabic. I just overheard, people talking, but I had no idea what they were saying. I had never seen the alphabet before I accepted Islam. So when I started learning, I learned from a transliteration that was prepared by somebody else. It was a book that was given to me, and I was memorizing what I thought these sort of sounded like. I didn't have a Quran teacher, and I was just going by this transliteration and studying. So, I was very excited about it, and I memorized probably about 7 different surahs from the back of the Quran, including Surah Al-Fatiha and some parts of my salah and everything from this little book of this transliteration. And then I was reading my salah, and I asked my ex-husband, what is that thing you're saying at the end of the salah? And he read it for me. And I said, I've never heard that before. And he said, well, what are you saying? And I read what I had memorized from this little transliterated book. And it was not the same sound at all. And then I read the Quran, the surahs that I thought I memorized, and the sounds I was making was, they were entirely incorrect and off the actual sound. So, of course, I realized I had to, find a teacher of Quran. This is one of the most important things that you must do. And there are so many courses, free courses and teachers online. It shouldn't be difficult for any of us to find one. But in order for us to do a self-study, to get to that transliteration, just to the beginning steps, so that we can even be proficient enough to study with a teacher, my recommendation is that, these sounds sound differently to everyone. Even I was trying to help a sister who had accepted Islam learn Quran, and I wrote out the way I transliterated, Surah Al-Fatiha, and she looked at it and she said, that doesn't sound like that to me. So I realized, those transliterations, they don't sound the same to everybody else. And we don't want to get into the linguistic diacritic marks, because very few people actually know what those mean. So it'd be like teaching somebody a whole other language. So my encouragement here, and what you'll see in the video, is me demonstrating listening to the Qari recite that ayah and writing out in your own mind what that sounds like to you. Keeping in mind that Arabic and English are entirely different. So sometimes my method is to take those sounds that are foreign to English, like ha, ain, ra, qa, these sounds, and actually put capital letters for those, and then lowercase with the rest of the letters, what it sounds like to you. So you are listening and you are reciting then too. You will take that and you will also practice and recite. So that'll be the next section, inshallah.
إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا.
So for the person who's studying the Quran that is not understanding the Arabic, cannot read Arabic yet, doesn't have any rules of the tajweed, and now you have your transliteration written out for your ayah. What you can do now to memorize is to just write it out. Write it out while reciting, and just do this as much as you can. The memorization is key to the repetition is memorization. So you have to just repeat it and repeat it. But don't just repeat it in your head. When you're writing it out, when you're making your copies and like repeating and repeating and writing it down the page, recite out loud to yourself. Okay, so you recite out loud as you're writing it. And in this same exercise, you can include another ayah on top of that, the previous ayah, and as like that, you can build a little library of transliterated surahs for yourself, transliterated chapters that you can refer to back when you're studying and when you were doing your revision, so that by the end of the surah, you have the whole surah written out. And then to review and to master that recitation, you can go back to the ayah that came before, then the ayah that came before that, then the ayah that came before that, until you're reading the whole surah from your transliteration. All of these things will help you memorize the ayah and have it in your head. But do not forget, especially if you're not reading from the Arabic, to practice and read along with recitation and a qari, and do not forget to find an actual living teacher that can teach you live and listen to your recitation. Because one of the worst things is to memorize the Quran wrong, because then your mouth is actually memorized how to say the letters in the incorrect way, and then you basically have to relearn the surah. So this is just baby steps, and this whole program, all of this is what I do to prepare so that I can present my surah to my teacher. It's not that I do all this by myself and I just stick with my own, faculties. I do run by everything I memorize by my Quran teacher. So this is a very heavy emphasis on that. This is just for ourselves to do like a self-study to prepare ourselves for studying with an actual teacher.
فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا فأعرض عمن تولى.
Jazakallahu khairan for watching with me, and I really appreciate you taking the time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make your journey of memorizing the Quran easy. May Allah, take out the knot in your tongue and make it easy for you to recite the words of Allah. You will find that the more you practice and the more you study, the more you memorize, your brain will get stronger and your memory will get stronger. But one of the main ways that we can make sure that we can memorize a lot of Quran and keep it in our hearts is not related to repetition. It's not related to study. It's not even related to sitting with a teacher. It's related to staying away from bad deeds and doing a lot of good deeds and keeping our heart cleansed. Because the Quran can be in somebody's heart, and this heart has to be a pure heart. It has to be a good heart. So inshallah, especially in Ramadan, but always to seek refuge in Allah from your own self, from the shaitan, and also to purify your acts, purify your intentions, so that the Quran is safe in your heart. Assalamu alaikum.